England's royal family.
I know she will bring to the demands of her new role the steadfast devotion to duty on which I have come to rely so much.
Prince William has reportedly found something surprising inside Camilla's car. A hidden secret in her glove box leaves him stunned. In just a few minutes, this secret sparks such a heated confrontation that King Charles is forced to act in a way no one expected. He calls security on his own wife. What could possibly be hidden in that unassuming compartment that would push a king to take such an unprecedented action? So join us as we uncover the shocking discovery by Prince William inside Camilla's car. Charles' call on security. The study had turned into a battlefield. Charles sat stiffly in his chair, knuckles pale and tight around the arms, every muscle tense. Across the room, Camilla lingered near the fireplace, her voice trembling and rising in a mix of fear and desperation. Between them, William stood like a silent anchor, his eyes fixed on the object lying on the desk, a quiet, accusing witness to the chaos unfolding. For years, Charles had faced crises with the calm of a man who had grown used to the relentless scrutiny of the public eye. He had endured scandals, insults, and endless gossip with measured patience. But now something deep inside him shattered. His voice, usually steady and controlled, snapped with sharpness, cutting through the heavy air of the room. Even the staff waiting outside the thick oak doors would have been startled by the sudden intensity. He demanded the truth. No excuses, no deflections. Every attempt Camilla made to explain only seemed to ignite his anger further. Her denials, her insistence that she had no idea how the incriminating item ended up in her glove box, rang hollow against the growing certainty in Charles's mind. Trust had been broken. He had defended her through decades of public hostility, fought to shield her from relentless criticism, and battled for her recognition as queen consort. And now, in this tense moment, he felt betrayed in a way words could barely describe. William watched quietly, his gaze flicking between his father and Camilla. He had not entered the study intending to ruin their marriage, but the evidence left no choice. His loyalty to the crown outweighed his personal discomfort. As Charles's voice grew louder, William realized something frightening. His father was no longer merely a husband struggling with suspicion. He was a king, weighing the very survival of the monarchy itself. That realization cast a sharp shadow over Camilla, leaving her cornered and vulnerable. Her pleas grew more urgent, threaded with panic. She insisted she was being framed, that external forces sought to destroy their family. Her eyes glistened as she looked to Charles, searching for the unwavering support he had always given her. But the king's patience, stretched to its absolute limit, was gone. The warmth that usually softened his gaze when he looked at her had vanished, replaced with a cold, unyielding resolve. Charles rose to his feet. His voice boomed across the study, declaring that this was no longer a matter of personal loyalty or affection. This was about royal survival. He would not allow carelessness, intentional or not, to threaten the crown he had fought so long to protect. His order for security to be called echoed through the room, final and inescapable. The door swung open almost immediately, and guards stepped in, their movements precise and disciplined. Their eyes scanned the tense scene without revealing any emotion. Camilla gasped, turning to Charles as if sheer will could make him retract his words. But his expression remained set, unshaken. For the first time in decades, he had put the crown above their relationship, a choice that cut deeper than any scandal, rumor, or betrayal ever could. William stayed motionless, yet the weight of the moment pressed down on him like a storm cloud. There was no turning back. And as security moved forward and Charles's patience finally broke, William understood with chilling clarity that the monarchy itself teetered on the edge of a storm it might never escape. How is situation in the palace before the sudden discovery? Let's find out. Palace atmosphere before the discovery. The cameras adored them. On the grand balcony of Buckingham Palace, King Charles and Queen Camilla often stood side by side, waving to the crowds with the calm poise and graceful dignity that everyone expected from monarchs. To the public eye, it seemed as if the stormy decades of whispers, scandals, and doubts had finally settled into a period of stability. Charles had taken the throne after years of anticipation, and Camilla, after long scrutiny and criticism, was gradually being accepted by many as his rightful consort. Outwardly, they appeared as a pair at ease with their roles, at peace with their destiny. But behind the gilded doors and perfectly rehearsed smiles, the palace was never truly tranquil. In recent months, those close to the royal household had noticed subtle shifts. Charles, always measured in speech and composed in emotion, carried a heaviness no amount of public ceremony could disguise. Camilla, once steady, confident, and seemingly unshakable, now sometimes seemed distant, her mind elsewhere, carrying a weight she refused to reveal. Even during moments of laughter with courtiers or charity events captured by photographers, a quiet tension lingered, like a shadow creeping beneath polished etiquette. It was not the kind of conflict that could be named outright, but rather one that simmered quietly, waiting for a spark. This delicate and tense world was exactly where Prince William had stepped in with mounting concern. Having grown up watching the fragile dynamics of his family play out under constant public scrutiny, William had learned to trust his instincts in ways his father rarely did. He knew when something felt wrong, and he acted decisively. In the early autumn of that year, during a visit to Clarence's house, his instincts stirred once more. A gathering that began as ordinary would soon spark a series of events capable of shaking the very foundations of royal unity. The day had begun innocently. The palace courtyards gleamed softly under the mellow London sunlight, and staff moved with practiced precision, attending to every detail. William arrived to discuss upcoming engagements with his father and exchanged polite greetings with Camilla, who appeared as gracious and composed as ever, her smile unwavering. Yet, in the quiet pauses between conversation, William felt something unusual. The air itself seemed staged, as if an invisible barrier separated the polished appearances from the hidden truth. His attention drifted almost casually to Camilla's car, parked discreetly in the side courtyard. William knew the palace vehicles were maintained with meticulous care, inspected regularly by security staff, but something felt off. Perhaps it was the way the driver lingered longer than usual before handing over the keys, or the subtle way Camilla had brushed off questions about her schedule that morning. Whatever it was, a sense of unease clung to the atmosphere, one William could not ignore. At that moment, he had no idea that inside the seemingly ordinary compartments of that car lay a secret, one that would soon ignite a confrontation unlike any the royal family had ever faced. But was William having suspicion? Let's take a closer look. William's watchful stare. The quiet of Clarence's house lingered in William's mind long after he had stepped out of his father's study. The conversation with King Charles had been measured and careful, talks of upcoming public appearances, the fine balance of keeping the public happy while carrying the weight of private burdens. Charles had listened, yes, but there had been a distance in his gaze, a subtle distraction, as if his thoughts were somewhere far away. William had grown used to that over the years, but today something felt different. Something gnawed at him. Perhaps it was the sudden hush after Camilla's polite laugh, so carefully pitched yet strangely sharp. Perhaps it was the way Charles had avoided her eyes when certain topics came up, a subtle hesitation that did not go unnoticed. Whatever it was, it left William unsettled, a restless energy that clung to him as he walked back toward the courtyard. There, he saw Camilla's car, parked perfectly to the side. The afternoon sun caught the gleaming surface, turning it into a mirror reflecting the palace's impeccable image. Everything seemed normal, ordinary, and yet, for reasons he could not immediately explain, William slowed his pace. His eyes were drawn to the vehicle, a pull he would have shrugged off on any other day. But today felt different. There was an instinct within him, a quiet, insistent tug, one that had guided him many times before. He thought of the earlier tension, the subtle stiffness in Camilla's smile, the almost imperceptible pause when she spoke of her evening plans. William had been trained to read people, to sense the currents beneath the calm surface. What he'd noticed in Camilla stirred a warning deep inside him. He thought of his mother, Princess Diana, and how she had always spoken about listening to the quiet alarms of the heart. That same inner voice now pressed on him, urging him not to look away. Camilla's driver was nowhere in sight. The keys lay inside the car, and palace staff moved about nearby, oblivious. To anyone else, it was unremarkable. But to William, the sight sparked curiosity. He approached with careful steps, silent on the stone courtyard, mindful not to attract attention. A guard stood far off, distracted, granting him a rare private moment. He rested his hand lightly on the car, his reflection staring back at him in the polished paint. A quick pulse of unease ran through him, though he could not explain why. With deliberate care, he opened the door and slid into the seat as if he belonged there. At first glance, everything seemed perfectly ordinary. The faint scent of leather, the spotless dashboard, neatly folded papers in the side pocket. Yet his attention kept returning to one small, easily overlooked compartment, the glove box. His fingers hovered over the handle, hesitation coiling in his chest. One voice whispered to leave it, to walk away and ignore the stirrings of suspicion. Another, sharper voice insisted that the truth often hides in plain sight. William took a steadying breath and pulled it open. The soft click seemed insignificant at first, but in that moment, it rang louder than any royal announcement. Inside was nothing casual, nothing trivial. What he saw made his blood freeze, a discovery that would ignite a storm the palace walls could no longer contain. The calm had ended. The first flash of lightning had struck. So, what did William find? Let's take a look. Discovering the glove box. For a long moment, William just stood there, frozen, unable to look away from what lay before him. The glove box, a small, unassuming compartment that in every other car might hold only receipts or a packet of mints, had revealed something entirely unexpected in Camilla's vehicle. Among the neatly folded papers and the faint scent of peppermint, there rested an object that seemed utterly out of place. It was not something a person might carry for a charity event or a casual afternoon drive. No, it radiated secrecy, intention, and danger. William's pulse spiked, his fingers trembling slightly as he reached in. The moment his skin brushed the object, he felt more than its physical weight. It was the weight of meaning, of consequences. The air in the car seemed to grow heavier, thicker, pressing in around him. Slowly, deliberately, he pulled the item into the light, eyes scanning it in disbelief. His mind raced, trying to make sense of why it was here at all. This was no trivial trinket, no forgotten note tucked away by mistake. Whatever it was, it carried implications far beyond Camilla herself. If the press ever discovered it, the monarchy could be thrown into another storm, one it might not survive. Carefully, almost reverently, William placed the object back down, as if it could scorch the leather seats with its mere presence. Questions flooded his mind. Had Camilla placed it here, or had someone else slipped it in without her knowledge? Each possibility twisted and turned into darker, more unsettling scenarios. Slowly, he closed the glove box, the latch clicking shut with a sound that felt absolute, like a seal being set on something irreversible. Stepping out of the car, William's gaze swept over the courtyard. Staff moved about as usual, entirely oblivious that something monumental had just shifted behind the palace walls. He adjusted his jacket, taking a deep breath to steady himself, and began walking back toward the main hall. Each step felt heavier than the last, burdened by the weight of what he had seen. He knew instinctively that this was no ordinary matter. It demanded attention, and it demanded it now. His thoughts immediately went to his father. King Charles had always valued loyalty, had always stood by Camilla through every scandal and storm. But how could he possibly react to this? This was no gossip, no tabloid rumor. This was real, tangible, and it was dangerous. William's heart raced as he replayed the discovery in his mind. His instincts had been right, guiding him to that small hidden glove box, a pocket of truth that had lain in plain sight all along. Now the memory of it was etched into him, impossible to ignore. He faced a choice: confront Camilla directly, risking anger and denial, or go straight to his father, knowing the revelation could fracture the fragile bond between husband and wife. The silence of the palace no longer felt peaceful. It was electric, tense, like the air just before a thunderstorm, when the first distant rumbles echo ominously. William realized, with a sinking certainty, that this secret would not stay hidden. Secrets, especially those tucked away in glove boxes, had a way of surfacing, and this one would demand nothing less than a reckoning. But was there any confrontation in the palace? Let's find out. Royal face-off. William did not waste a single moment. The image of what he had discovered in Camilla's car burned so brightly in his mind that hesitation was impossible. He moved through the long, echoing corridors of Clarence's house with a firm, purposeful stride, each step carrying the weight of someone who knew the next conversation he was about to have could change everything. Guards at the doors straightened automatically as he passed, oblivious to the storm he carried with him. A storm that could unravel the carefully maintained facade of the monarchy. When he reached his father's private study, he paused for only a heartbeat, gathering his resolve, before stepping inside without ceremony. Charles sat behind his desk, leafing through papers with a distracted air. The moment he looked up, his expression shifted, weariness melting into curiosity at the sight of his eldest son. William closed the door firmly behind him, his eyes locked on his father. For a long, tense moment, silence hung in the air like a heavy curtain. Then William spoke. His voice was low, controlled, but every word carried the urgency of undeniable truth. He explained exactly what he had seen, what he had taken from Camilla's glove box, and the chilling implications that followed. Charles listened in stunned silence, his complexion paling as each detail fell into place. His hands pressed together on the desk as if bracing himself against the truth. For a moment, he said nothing, searching William's face for any hint of exaggeration. Finding none, he exhaled slowly, a sound tinged with disbelief and dread. Finally, the king spoke, his tone quiet, yet edged with steel. He asked William whether he could be absolutely certain, whether there was any chance of mistake or misinterpretation. William's reply was unwavering, leaving no room for doubt. Then Camilla entered. She moved into the room with her usual poise, but her confident smile faltered when she saw the gravity written across their faces. The door closed behind her, and in that instant, the tension in the room thickened. William's jaw clenched, his gaze fixed sharply on her. Charles rose slowly from his chair, his usual calm replaced by a rare, taut alertness. The king's voice, when he first addressed her, was not angry. It carried weariness, the weary hope that she could explain away the shadow that William's discovery had cast over their union. He asked plainly about the glove box, about what had been found there. Camilla froze. For a fleeting moment, her composure cracked, revealing genuine shock. She quickly recovered, denying any knowledge of how the item had appeared, insisting that someone must be trying to set her up. Her voice trembled with indignation, yet every word she spoke only deepened the unease in the room. Charles's eyes, usually soft and gentle with her, hardened with suspicion, a look William had rarely seen. The confrontation escalated. Voices rose, echoing against the ornate silence of the study. Camilla pleaded. Charles pressed. William stood unwavering. Decades of carefully managed royal reputation seemed to teeter on the edge of collapse. At last, Charles reached a breaking point. His patience snapped, and his authority demanded action. He issued a command that stunned even those familiar with his temper. Security would be summoned. The weight of those words hung in the air, sharp and unrelenting. William stood motionless, hearing the finality in his father's voice. Camilla's face drained of color. Her composure, once flawless, faltered under the gravity of what was unfolding. The king's decision was deliberate and unmistakable. This was no ordinary confrontation. Something fundamental had shifted, and there was no turning back. The object William had found in the glove box was more than a private embarrassment. It was a tangible sign of something far more troubling. It bore markings that connected it to shadowy figures outside the palace, individuals whose names were whispered only in the corridors of power. It suggested contact, correspondence, or influence that no member of the royal family should have entertained. Charles demanded to see it again. William hesitated, torn between protecting the monarchy and revealing the full truth. With steady hands, he placed it on the polished desk. The king leaned forward, eyes narrowing as the golden lamplight reflected off the object. Recognition dawned, and his breath caught. This was no rumor. This was undeniable. Substance. Reality. Camilla moved closer, her voice breaking as she insisted she did not know how it had come to be in her possession. She pleaded for them to consider the possibility of an elaborate setup, a plot by enemies aiming to fracture the family from within. Her words were passionate, but lacking the solidity Charles needed. His questions came sharper, louder, demanding clarity that never arrived. Experts were quietly called to verify the item. Their conclusion, cautious yet firm, confirmed William's certainty. It was genuine. Its presence in Camilla's possession could not be dismissed. Either she had knowingly kept something damaging, or she had been recklessly compromised. Both options were damning for Charles. The revelation struck at the very core of his reign. Decades of careful effort to bring Camilla from the edge of scandal into acceptance now risked unraveling in an instant, all because of a single item hidden in the depths of a glove box. His face, usually an unyielding mask of royal control, betrayed rare vulnerability. He looked not like a king, but like a man confronting the collapse of trust he had fought so hard to build. William, despite the pain of seeing his father shaken, felt grim determination settle over him. The monarchy could not ignore this discovery. Silence, denial, or delay would only invite disaster once the truth inevitably leaked beyond the palace walls. The glove box revelation was not merely about Camilla. It was about the survival of the crown itself. The weight of that truth pressed down on all three of them. The walls of the study, heavy with centuries of history and tradition, seemed to lean in closer, demanding reckoning. What had been uncovered was no ordinary secret. It was a test of loyalty, integrity, and the very strength of the monarchy. For Charles, the choice he would make in the hours ahead would define not just his reign, but the future of the royal family itself. Did Camilla make any plea? Let's find out. Camilla's frantic appeal. The heavy door thudded shut behind the guards, and the moment it did, Camilla's carefully maintained composure finally shattered. For years she had endured whispered rumors, public criticism, and relentless headlines. yet none of it compared to the raw humiliation of being treated like a suspect inside her own home. Her voice trembled as she faced Charles, hands stretched out, eyes wide with fear and disbelief. She pleaded with him to stop, to remember everything they had endured together, to recall the battles they had faced side by side. "This is not just about an object in a glove box," she said, voice quivering. "This is about trust, about us, about the life we've built together against impossible odds." Charles did not move. His eyes, once warm and reassuring, were now cold and unyielding. In that moment, he had made a choice, placing the weight of the crown above her. Her words seemed to vanish into the silence, unanswered, leaving her desperation echoing off the walls. She turned then to William, searching for an ally, a hint of sympathy, but found only a prince whose resolve was shaped by duty rather than emotion. His face was calm, firm, and unshaken by her pleas. She raised her voice, breaking into cracks of emotion, repeating her innocence again and again. She insisted she had been set up, that enemies of the monarchy had planted the incriminating item to create division within the royal family. Her warnings were urgent. By doubting her, they were feeding the hands of those who wanted the monarchy destroyed. Her words carried a raw, undeniable truth. Yet the suddenness and intensity of her protest made it difficult to discern whether it was honesty or a desperate performance of survival. The guards lingered near the doorway, a constant, silent reminder of Charles's command. Every second they stayed heightened the sense of finality pressing down on her. Camilla's shoulders trembled as she sank into a chair, hiding her face in her hands. Her tears were not staged for cameras. They were the uncontrolled sobs of a woman whose world seemed to collapse in real time. Between sobs, she spoke of her sacrifices, the endurance it had taken, the years she had remained by Charles's side, even when walking away would have been easier. For a brief moment, something flickered in Charles's expression, a shadow of the man who had once defied tradition to be with her. But the weight of the crown was heavier than anything else, and his silence cut deeper than any words could. To Camilla, it was not just rejection, it was a confirmation that her place beside him was no longer certain. The study, steeped in centuries of history, seemed to bear witness to a queen consort stripped of dignity before her husband and stepson. Her pleas had failed to sway them. Realizing this, a chilling quietness fell over her. She lifted her head, eyes red but steady, and whispered, "If you truly believe I am guilty, then perhaps you have already chosen a future without me." Her words hung in the air, fragile yet weighty, carrying the unspoken possibility that the royal family had crossed a line from which there could be no return. Was the palace surprised by Camilla's action? Let's take a closer look. The palace in disbelief. Camilla's last words lingered in the study long after they left her lips, echoing like a warning no one could ignore. The room, once alive with raised voices and desperate pleas, had fallen into a silence so thick it pressed on the chest. Charles stood near his desk, shoulders taut, his face a mask of controlled tension, while William remained frozen, eyes fixed on the polished floor, as if trying to make sense of the storm that had just passed. Even the guards at the door, trained to remain unreadable, shifted with an unmistakable unease. Everyone in that room felt it. This was no longer just a family quarrel. This was a full-blown royal crisis. As the news slipped through the corridors of Clarence House, it spread not in official reports, but in hushed whispers. Staff exchanged wary glances, voices low, words carefully chosen. They had long been used to managing rumors, putting out small fires before they grew. But this felt different. The very air seemed charged, as if the house itself had held its breath, waiting. Behind closed doors, Camilla retreated, accompanied only by a handful of loyal aides who seemed uncertain what to do. The queen consort, once commanding any room she entered with undeniable authority, now appeared fragile and shaken. Her desperate pleas to Charles had met only disbelief, and the sting of being doubted by both her husband and her stepson weighed on her like a lead cloak. Some aides tried to console her. Others, less sympathetic, whispered that perhaps this reckoning had been a long time coming. Meanwhile, Charles attempted to maintain a veneer of composure, forcing himself to continue with endless briefings, documents requiring signatures, and the appearances that never stopped. Yet his mind remained tethered to the object that still rested on his study desk. It was no longer merely evidence. It had become a symbol of the monarchy's fragility, a stark reminder of how trust could vanish and stability crumble in an instant. He knew that calling security on Camilla would not remain a secret forever. Once a decision like that is set in motion, the world eventually finds out. William withdrew into measured silence, grappling with the weight of his actions. He had acted out of loyalty to the crown, but the image of Camilla's tear-streaked face haunted him. The palace machine was relentless, and once doubt was planted, it rarely faded. Yet he also knew that doing nothing would have been far worse. The monarchy survived on perception, and any weakness hidden within its walls would sooner or later be magnified for the world to see. His choice had been harsh, even brutal, but he believed it was necessary. Through the night, Clarence House buzzed with uneasy energy. Advisors debated strategies to contain the situation if it leaked. Servants shared fragments of gossip, each retelling adding new embellishments. Some feared scandal, others feared something deeper, that the family itself might never fully recover from the rupture now exposed. By morning, the shock had not lessened. If anything, it had grown heavier. What had begun as a private confrontation in the study now sent ripples through every corner of the palace. The monarchy's carefully constructed image of unity now hung by the thinnest of threads, and everyone within those walls understood the unspoken truth. If that thread broke, the world would watch the unraveling, piece by piece. What does the future hold for the monarchy? Let's dive in and find out. Future of the monarchy. The morning sun rose over London in its familiar brilliance, spilling golden light across the rooftops and cobbled streets. But inside the elegant walls of Clarence House, the day carried a weight far heavier than the light outside. The confrontation from the previous night still lingered, thick and suffocating, like a storm cloud refusing to break. Staff moved carefully, their steps quieter than usual, voices lowered to whispers, as if the very walls themselves might listen and judge. No one dared ask aloud what had happened. Yet the tension was palpable. Everyone sensed that something profound, irreversible, had been set into motion. King Charles began his day with the precision and poise expected of a monarch. His attire was flawless, his briefings on state matters meticulously reviewed, yet his face betrayed him. The lines of sleepless hours were etched deep, his eyes distant, his demeanor unusually heavy. He had faced countless political storms, public outrage, and personal tragedy, but this felt unlike anything he had ever endured. Public appearances could mask the calm exterior of a king, but behind closed doors, he wrestled with the most agonizing choice of his reign: whether to continue defending the woman he had loved for decades or to place the crown and the continuity of the monarchy above all else. Camilla remained secluded in her private quarters, refusing meals, company, or comfort. Her once unshakable confidence had shattered, splintering with every memory of the study, replaying the confrontation again and again. Was she truly the victim of a deliberate setup, as she had pleaded in desperation? Or had her own carelessness allowed others to exploit her position? The realization that her husband had chosen suspicion over trust cut deeper than any scandalous headline ever could. For the first time since marrying Charles, she wondered if her place at his side was truly secure. Prince William spent the morning in quiet reflection, the weight of his choices pressing heavily on him. He knew that his actions had set the current turmoil into motion. While he felt no regret for revealing the truth, he could not escape the consequences it had unleashed. His loyalty was not to any single person, but to the monarchy itself, to an institution that had weathered centuries of upheaval and remained a symbol for millions. Yet the cost of his decision was now painfully evident. He had driven a wedge deeper into his family, one that might never fully heal. Meanwhile, advisors gathered discreetly, discussing strategies should news of the confrontation escape to the press. They debated how to shape the narrative, how to frame events in ways that could preserve dignity. Yet, beneath their careful plotting lay a silent acknowledgement. The real challenge was not the media, but the family itself. No amount of spin or staged appearances could mend a fracture that ran this deep. If the cracks continued to widen, the monarchy itself would carry the scars for generations. As evening approached, Charles stood by a window overlooking the palace gardens, the sprawling city beyond stretching endlessly into the distance. He thought of his coronation, of the vows he had taken, of the long journey that had brought him to this moment. He understood, more than ever, that the crown was larger than any single person, larger even than himself. The decisions he faced now would not only determine Camilla's future, but could shape the destiny of the monarchy itself. And as the sun finally dipped below the horizon, casting the city in shades of crimson and gold, one truth became undeniable. The storm had only just begun. The palace might never reveal every detail of what transpired behind closed doors. But one thing was certain: the discovery in Camilla's glove box had ignited a firestorm, one that could forever alter the very heart of the monarchy. What do you think about King Charles's action against Camilla after Prince William's shocking discovery? Let us know your answer in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe.